as a pop. Those are other tales, tales that males came first. They are the worst. Bred instead, Earth Mother tales. Men have been menaces ever since Genesis, just as it's chaptered and versed. Out of the primal chaos, out of the swell and swirl, rose a resplendent, virtue invested, full but firm-breasted girl, predating Adam. We had a Madam Human, long before sinning in the beginning, woman. Skip.
Hello world. Some people know me as King Khan. Some people know me as the Black Snake. Some even call me Buddha. But I am here to tell you that what this world needs right now is to show some global solidarity. This world might seem to be crumbling all around us, but there are always ways that you can help. Brother Malik Rahim from Algiers, New Orleans, has been an activist all his life. Leader of the Louisiana chapter of the Black Panthers back in the 70s, co-founder of Common Ground Relief, an environmental justice organization formed in the aftermath of the Hurricane Katrina. He was a leader in the anti-death penalty pilgrimage for life and the successful campaign to free the Angola Three.
I believe we are at a crossroad in human existence, as whether we preserve life as we know it, or we sit idly by and allow it to be squandered away. What type of legacy we gonna leave to our children and to our grandchildren? We can't go on like this. This planet cannot go on like this. Will they love us or will they curse us for leaving them this type of legacy? You know, the fight injustice anywhere is the fight injustice everywhere. Every man, woman, and child who have been blessed to get involved. Get involved in your community.
I am Lucifer, the light bearer. My magnificent gift to humanity, the absolute absence of morality. Nothing restricts me. I transgress every law, I burn the sacred books and constitutions. No religion can contain me. I destroy all theories and cause all dogmas to explode. The depths of the depths of the depths. No one lives any deeper than I do. I am the source of all existence. I am the one who gives life to dark grottos. The one who knows the center around which turn all densities. I am the viscosity of everything that vainly attempts to be definite. The supreme strength of magma. The stench that denounces the hypocrisy of values. The carrion mother of every flower. The corrupter of vain minds. Swallowed in perfection. No peace with me. No peace with little home. No candle gospels. No sugar virgin for the clammy arms of fairy nuns. I don't really defecate on the leprous words of morality. I do not forbid myself from imagining the prophet in all fours being mounted by a horny donkey. I am the ecstatic songster of incest and the champion of all the melody. The The nail of my finger delighted his nights open the belly of an innocent, so I can dip my breath in his strife.
Hello, hello, hello. All you kids out there, it's time for some Tarot-Rism! Hello, and welcome to our show. We have a very splendid show prepared for you tonight. So we started that whole the show off today with Eartha Kitt, and this was where we were at talking about the cards. Eartha Kitt, the card of justice, the number 8. The topic of today's show is about justice. Now, Eartha Kitt, back in the day, she was quite a pioneer. An incredible artist. You know, she was doing lots of very provocative things, anti-government, anti-Vietnam War, and we're going to get into more about Eartha later in the show. But in the spirit of justice, we actually have an incredible guest for you tonight, John Burl Smith, the co-founder of the Invaders, is with us, and so let's roll the Invaders trailer so you can get a little knowledge about what it's all about.
Have you or your group organized last night's burnings?
We organize people. If people burn, they burn.
In 1968, united under the banner of Black Power, young people were taking their revolutionary new politics to the streets of America.
The leadership of the Invaders was folk heroes in the community because, they stood for what was right. They walked the talk.
They were just cool dudes, They were progressive to me. They were like ahead of their time.
We all had the same problem. The question was how to do something about it.
That became the Invader organization.
Now we saw the violence by some of the young people who are excellent students of this very sick society of ours.
The city of Memphis has willfully attacked the black community. If Dr. King is going to come in here, he's going to have to come in here and analyze the situation and meet the needs of black people here.
I met with the leaders of the young militant organization here in Memphis. We don't have any problem with many of the young militants who talk in terms of violence. Our method is to communicate with them.
I don't give a crap what America says. America is just a part of humanity. And humanity is not ever going to make a change about anything without what? Some disruption, some actual disturbance.
The sun is shining, but the cold don't walk.
All right, we are back. So now it's my pleasure to introduce to you my co-hosts Jenny Messer and John B. Smith.
Hi.
Hey.
What's up?
Such an honor.
Hey, John B. All right. So for all you out there, we're broadcasting live in Atlanta, Berlin, and Los Angeles. Now, we got a wonderful show coming up. So, John B., let's start painting the picture. Tell us about where you grew up.
All right. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, home of the blues, Bill Street, all of that, My neighborhood was a particular kind of neighborhood. It was all black. And we were some rambunctious kids, during my high school years. I played football. And when I graduated, of course, I was like most young black guys, looking for a way out of the ghetto. I joined the Air Force. It was not what I really thought it was, because when I went in, I was thinking about being John Wayne, spending 20 years, retiring from the military and living this easy life. But of course, Vietnam happened and it got real serious. So when my 4 years were up, I came back to Memphis, really educated about the world in a way that I never would have been had I stayed in Memphis, as some of my friends did. But I was a disabled veteran, and so I got a job, what they call a good job then, because I was working for the federal government in the at the Army Depot, and that enabled me to really start to live the bachelor life that I dreamed about while I was in the military. Had an apartment, a Volkswagen car, you know, and that was the only Volkswagen in the whole Riverside area. But that allowed me to be a playboy, kind of, you know, chase girls, have parties at my crib on weekends. My friends and I, they had this club that was up on the north end of our neighborhood, and that's where we all hung out at. And we had pretty good ability to have friends come up there. We'd hang out, get drunk like most young guys. And this was right at the time when Black Power first came. And Memphis was pretty important in the Black Power development because this was in 1966, and they had the march leaving Memphis with James Meredith. He decided that a black man should be able to walk from Memphis to Jackson, Mississippi, and not be in fear of his life. Well, he gets about a mile outside of Memphis. A redneck jumps up out of the woods and ambushes him. And this is when all the civil rights leaders decide that they're going to finish Meredith's march going to Jackson, Mississippi. Well, on the way to Jackson, Stokely Carmichael utters the words "Black Power" for the first time. And that sent shockwaves through the country because it was about black. Civil rights was about middle class and living, you know, trying to adjust to the demands of white people. Well, when Stokely said Black Power, that changed the whole dynamics. And because he was in school in Atlanta here, and he went to Morehouse. Well, a friend of mine who I grew up with, I played football with, his name is Charles Cabbage. Charles was down here in Atlanta going to Morehouse himself. And so he was here when Black Power first started to develop. So he was able to get the kind of introduction to Black Power that I didn't get. I wasn't thinking about Black Power. I was a good colored boy. I had a good job. I was enjoying myself, partying, chasing girls. And, you know, I wasn't anti-civil rights, but it wasn't something I wanted to do. Right. Well, one day when we were up at the log cabin, you know, drinking, a friend of mine said, "Hey, man, you know, Charles Cabbage back in town." And the other guy said, "Yeah, and I don't want to hear from him because he's talking that Black Power stuff. And I don't want no part of it, so I'm going inside." And the other one said, "That's Charles coming down the street." And I looked, and I didn't see anybody that looked like Charles because, see, we all wore what they call college cuts, that close, your haircut close to your head. We believe in dressing sharp and all of this. And Cap walks up, and he's got a big afro. He's got on a dashiki, sandals. You know, and I'm like, what is this? Who is this guy? And so he comes up and he's talking Black Power. And I'm arguing with Charles about Black Power because, like I say, I'm a good colored boy. I'm not ready to start fighting white people. I think the problem is them bad white people. I don't see it as a systemic problem. And Charles and I argued back and forth. Oh man, I'm trying to convince him that he's wrong, and he's telling me that I'm wrong. And I'm telling, man, you know, the Bill of Rights, that tell us what we're supposed to do. You know, the law protects us and all of this good stuff. And Charles is telling me, man, you crazy. When they wrote the Bill of Rights, your folks was a slave, you know? And I didn't like the word slave. I'm not a slave, man. I wasn't no slave. That was happening then. Everything had changed now. So that was basically my introduction to Black Power. And
so what was the point? What was the point where you realized that you had to join the movement?
Oh yeah, well, like I say, Charles, I guess he had been in town for about a month, about a month and a half. And since we were friends, you know, we argued about Black Power, but we were still friends. And I'd gotten with him since I had a car and could get around. I was even a better friend then. And so he was going to meetings and talking to people about Black Power, and he would get me to give him a ride, you know. And I've taken places, and so I had started to get some of the rhetoric of Black Power, but I still wasn't off in it, you know. I wasn't a fan, I'll say, of Black Power. I still was a good American, you know. I believed in the Bill of Rights and the Declaration and all that good stuff. And so while I was going with him, some of the ideas started to sink in. So one night we were headed over to my apartment, and I needed to get gas. And so I stopped at this gas station, which is right on the edge of our neighborhood. And the attendant come out, and I got out the car, and you know, this was one of the 62 Volkswagen. You didn't have a gas port on the outside to put gas in. You had to lift the hood to get to the gas port. And so I did this because I had lost a couple of gas caps. And this guy at this station sold me the gas cap that I had on the car that night. So I saw I had a gas cap on there, and went back, got in the car, waited, because this was before self-service. An attendant had to come out and actually pump gas in your car. Plus, it was a white gas station, you know. So these were when I said white gas station, the attendants were white.
Right.
And he's an old guy. And when he finished pumping the gas, he told me, he said, hey man, you don't have a gas cap, but I got one I can sell you. I said, what? He said, you don't have a gas cap. I said, well, when I came in here, I had a gas cap. Well, you don't have one now. And while he's talking, I'm trying to figure out what to do here, because I knew I had a gas cap. And he's moving around, and he had a little budge in his shirt. And every time he moved, it would move around. And one of the favorite tricks of stealing is just sliding it inside your shirt.
Right.
And I realized that, so I reached out and touched the cap. And of course, when I did that, he turned to a real redneck then. Nigga, if you don't keep your hands off me, I'll blow your brains out. If you don't get off my lot, I'll call the police. No, you ain't got to call the police. I'll call them. I got rights. So I go call the police. When they come, they don't come talk to me. They go talk to the white guy. And I'm trying to tell them I'm the one that called. This guy stole my gas cap. And they just look at me. These so happened they were black cops. Because Memphis was one of the few cities in the South that had black police on the force. So I'm expecting them to at least listen to me. But no, they go talk to the white guy. And while they're talking to him, 4 or 5 other police cars show up.
Right.
And since we're in our neighborhood and people recognize the Volkswagen, they stop and they're watching, trying to figure out what's happening. And when they come out, there's a white captain has arrived. So I figured, okay, I can talk to this guy. He got some sense. So I go over and start talking to the captain about, I was the one that called and this white guy stole my gas cap. And he looked at me and said, stole your gas cap? Why would he steal your gas cap? He's a businessman. He wouldn't do that. I said, well, that's what he did. But at this time, there's about 300 people together. So he tells me I got to get off the lot, or they're going to take me to jail. And of course, I'm a veteran. I've been to the military. I've defended the country. I'm a disabled veteran. All these things going through my mind about me having rights and stuff like that. So I'm like, hey, man, what do you mean? Get off, let go. I'm not leaving till I get my gas cap.
Right.
So when I say this, of course, nobody, he called the rest of them over. They throw me in the car and I'm arrested. Me and Charles. Charles hadn't done anything. He was just sitting in the car. So while I'm talking to the police, a couple of them saw Charles. So they go around the other side, hands on guns, just like they do now. Get out the car. And he gets out. Well, Charles, when he gets out of the car, the Volkswagen, Charles is about 6'5". So when he stood up, the first thing you saw was this big afro coming up over the top of the car. And every police in the lot grabbed their guns and got in the stance and everything. Right. They grabbed Charles, threw him up against the car, threw me in the police car, threw him. And so that's how I got jumped into Black Power.
Wow. So now I guess that must have been kind of crazy for people. I mean, at that time, for a black man to call the police on a white person is not a normal thing, right? But you felt that you had the right to do that.
Oh, well, like I said, I was a good colored boy, Harris. I believed that America was a good country. It was just these bad white people, the KKK and those people that were making things bad for everybody. So if we could just deal with them bad white people, then everything would be all right. So calling the police, to me, was a natural reaction of having gone to the military. I served time in Phoenix, Arizona, served time, went to California. I'd been other places where there wasn't segregation, even though, they had their restrictions. You were in a different kind of world. So this is all going through my head about having rights and what I should be able to do. So when this white guy steals my gas cap, I'm an American. You don't do that to an American. I'm a veteran and all of this. So it was that kind of shock treatment, if you want to say, for me, to wake me up to the conditions that I was really living under.
I was just curious. So you mentioned that there were 2 black cops in the beginning that came to respond to the situation. So there was no inkling from them that they were kind of supporting you or believing you. Like, you think they were just completely brainwashed into like being against you because you were black?
Yeah, well, hey, most of the black police on the police forces today were just like them.
Right.
They identified with being policemen, and they identified me as the problem because the white guy said he didn't steal my gas cap.
Right.
So I asked the lieutenant, "Did y'all search him? Did you search the office to see?" He looked at search him. Why would we do that?
Right.
So I was the problem, and even though I was the victim, nobody treated me like a problem, and that's why I was saying that kind of experience, like young guys today, when they go through that getting stopped and ID cards demanded and pulled out of the car, most of them are just like me in terms of thinking they got rights. It's 2020 in America, so I can expect to be treated like a human being. But no, police see black people as the problem. So you're the ones we are here to police.
Right.
No matter what you do what we say. You don't have the right to refuse to show me an ID card if I demand it. But that is what the law said. Unless you there have probable cause, they're not even supposed to stop you and ask you certain questions. And if you're a white person, that's the way they do. But if you're black, it's altogether different. Right. So that was the way they thought, the police thought then, even though they were black.
So now, okay, so this has happened to you, and you suddenly your vision of America is shattered, right? Now there was the Black organizing project, which you were a part of. Can we talk about how that started?
Yeah, well, okay. As I said, Charles and I had been, I had been accompanying him to meetings and stuff that he was trying to, because he was trying to get Black Power started. Charles brought Black Power to Memphis. Before he came home, there was no consideration. Civil rights was that was the best we had going, and most of the civil rights leaders were Uncle Toms. They saw themselves as the middlemen between the white leaders and the black community. They were the ones that talked to the white folks, and the white folks told them what they were willing to do in terms of concessions, and they would bring that back to the black community and tell the black community how to accept it and that kind of stuff. So Charles we're going to these meetings, and he's standing up talking to the different groups and the civil rights leaders about the same thing that Stokely and Rap Brown and those guys were talking about down here in Atlanta, and so that was not even heard of in Memphis. Just calling yourself black was a revolutionary statement because nobody wanted to be called black. Black was the last thing you wanted to be. Everybody wanted the best is I'm colored, I'm a Negro, and Charles is all on top of this. But while I'm attending the meetings with him, I'm picking up on information and learning. And because of the incident, see, when we got arrested, that was the biggest thing that had happened in Memphis as far as civil rights to come along. And the NAACP, because we got arrested, they saw how they could use that to in the community for their organizing purposes. So that's why we were going to some of these meetings. And of course, we get introduced, and Charles would do the talking. And I'm basically, I don't have anything to say because I don't know anything about Black Power. But I'm picking up stuff. And that's during that summer, because of the publicity that we were getting, they had an organization there that was working on poverty called the Map South. And Map South was getting federal funds to work in the Black community on basically in the poorest part of the community, try and get people health care and stuff like that. And they were really trying to survey the Black community to get information about the level of poverty. And so that's how we really I really got introduced to it, because they put us on as field workers. And so at this time, I was still working at the depot, but I was working with Map South too.
So you were when you say field worker, so you were going to all the neighborhoods and assessing the situation of poverty, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I worked my day job in the evening. We would go to the neighborhoods and talk to people. And of course, because Charles had brought Black Power to Memphis, the white folks were reacting against that. And there was this reporter that worked for the Commercial Appeal, which was a big white newspaper. They had done stories on us in the Black newspaper about Black Power, and of course Charles running the Black Power rhetoric.
Right.
They were looking for a way to, I guess, show Black Power in the way that white people saw it, you know, as a detriment to the community, just like Trump is doing Black Lives Matter.
Right.
And so this white reporter came to one of the meetings that we were attending, and she was talking to me about she would like to, you know, interview us and do a story on the work we were doing in the neighborhood. And I thought that was good because, you know, I don't know anything. And so I introduced her to Charles, and she said, yes, she'd like to come and see where we worked and what we were doing. And so I said, okay, we'll take you out and we'll give you a tour and show you what we're doing. And so it was Charles, me, and Charles's friend who lived in North Memphis, Kobe Smith. And Kobe, his family were civil rights work people. They'd, you know, always been a part of that group. And Kobe was basically a civil rights worker.
Actually, there's one wonderful thing that Kobe was talking about in an interview recently that I saw of his, and he was talking about how he was actually on that march with Dr. King and Stokely Carmichael, and I think he was about 17 when you were after the March Against Fear, and he was talking about how when he was like 17 and he was this testosterone-filled teenager. And he was telling Dr. King, like, you know, if they want to, you know, fuck with us, then we want to, you know, fight back, you know. And Stokely was there, and so when Kobe came into the picture, what did he bring into the group?
Well, like I say, he and Charles were friends because Kobe, his folks were what you call upper middle class in terms of you know, college educated, and so they wanted Kobe to get these experiences. He had gone to civil rights workshops and things like that, so he knew the rhetoric, and this is how he knew Dr. King and all of that. So he was down here in Morehouse at some of the gatherings and that they had here, which is when he and Charles became good friends. So when Charles came home, Kobe had was already in Memphis, and we went out and met Kobe and talked, and that's when we started talking about trying to do something in the city. And like I said, this time I'm sort of like a ride along because I don't really know anything about organizing or anything like that. So Key and Cab and Kobe were the ones that really had the knowledge at the time. And because he was going to Southwestern College, which was an all-white college, and Kobe was one of the only black students at Southwestern. So that gave him some real status, you know, being an elite, so to speak. And when we got together, all the three of us went to work for Map South.
Right.
And the day the white reporter, which was a woman, her name was Kay Pittman Black,
right,
interviewed us. You know, she asking us all kind of questions about our background.
Later, it was found out that Kay Pittman Black was actually paid by COINTELPRO to fuck up what you were trying to, the positive things you were trying to achieve. I'm just curious. So, what were the kind of programs that you were thinking or about organizing with the BOP?
Well, see, we had to get there because when we first started, like I said, Map South was our first real opportunity to go into the community and start, you know, trying to address the issues of poverty in the black community. And when Kay Pittman Black does this story, it's supposed to be about what we're doing in the community, but the story she does is about Black power, recruiting black, you know, about us recruiting Black power
right,
people to help us destroy the black community.
Right, she's trying to expose the virus or whatever.
Right. So the story comes out altogether different from what we gave her as information, and she's talking about Charles being in Atlanta and being a disciple of Stokely Carmichael, and Kobe's trips with James Meredith, and being there when Stokely first said Black Power, you know, because these are the kind of things that they said to her, you know, when she asked about their background. Well, how did you get experience to do what you're doing, you know? And so she was just getting information to set us up.
Right, to expose
the
yeah.
And at this time, there was a white congressman here there in Memphis. His name was Dan Kirkendall. And so when she did the story, he goes to Congress and makes this big speech about that Black Power being about race, attacking white folks and destroying the community, trying to start riots and stuff, because this was also the time when right after Detroit had jumped off. And Detroit came about a week to a month after Newark had jumped off. So this was what they call the long, hot summer. And her way of tying us into it is saying that that's what we were trying to do in Memphis. We were trying to start riots. So that story, today the word is it went viral.
Right.
And in going viral, they the depot, Kirkendall went to the depot and told them they had to get rid of me. Right. So they fired me from the depot, and then they fired us from Map South.
Right.
On Kirkendall's pressure to get rid of us. And see, this is when we done learned some things to do about organizing, but now we don't, we're free to do what we want in terms of working in the community. And being a disabled veteran, I was already getting a disabled pension, but I also had the GI Bill. So I started to school at a junior college in Memphis. It was called S.A. Owens. In 71, they merged with Lemoyne College, which is now, they call it Lemoyne Owen. But then it was just Owen. So I was at S.A. Owen College. Kobe was at Southwestern. I had friends at Lemoyne. And so we got together and started talking about how we could start Black Student Association on all these campuses. And we did that. And then we looked at Memphis State, which is just really starting allowing Black students to go to Memphis State about 5 years back in, I think it was like 61, somewhere in there. And that made it possible for us. So we decided, let's go out to Memphis State.
Right.
And get a Black Student Association going out there. Well, Memphis State was still segregated. Even though students, they told them when they started school that they could only go to class, use the library, and eat in the lunch hall. That was, even though they had a student union, for students, the Black kids couldn't go there. So they had this corner in the cafeteria that all the Black students ate in this one corner. They played cards during lunch. And we had gone out there to try and talk to some of them about starting a Black Student Association. First, we went out there a couple of times, nothing happened. So when we went out there, we went out that day, and same thing was happening. And so we went in the cafeteria, all the Black kids were over in the corner eating lunch, and the white kids, they was just walking, doing what they do. And when Black kids got their lunch trays, if there wasn't a seat available for them in that corner, they had to wait on one of the other Black students to leave before they could have a seat and have their lunch.
Right.
This pissed me off. So I climbed up on top of a table and I started talking to the Black kids the way Charles was talking to me about.
That's fantastic.
I didn't really have a good understanding, but I knew more than they did. So I'm standing up on top of this table, giving them hell about letting them white folks push them off in the corner. You paying to go to school just like they are. You paying, dues for student dues. Your folks paying taxes just like they paying taxes, but they got y'all sitting in the corner like slaves. And the campus police came in, grabbed Cab and Kobe and me, and woof, took us out to the administration building, and talked to us for a while. Of course, Cab and Kobe was doing. I let them do the talking because they really understood. But that one incident, they put us off the campus and told us not to come back. But one incident really, it made the papers and stuff, so it got the campuses to start thinking about starting Black Student Association. And this is where the Black Organizing Project came from, because we saw putting together an organization where all the 4 student groups were a part of an umbrella organization, and we would use that platform to reach out to the community and to organize on campuses.
Okay. So, so how did the transformation to the Invaders happen? Now, one person I want to talk about especially is Donnie Delaney.
Okay, well, as I said, our organizing effort was taking place in layers. Like I said, we started out just basically with Map South, Then we moved to the Black Student Association, and we had started talking about this umbrella organization that we call the Black Organizing Project. Well, Charles, he was from a large family. I think it was 7 of them. And so he was he had an older brother, but his older brother had moved to Southern Illinois. And so Charles was like, when he came home, college graduate, he was the big guy in the family. And he had 2 brothers right under him and a sister. And so Charles was telling them about Black Power and what they ought to be learning in school. They didn't have any Black books in school. They wasn't teaching the Black history. They couldn't wear, the school board had passed, regulations against students wearing dashikis to school, wearing afros and things like that. And so when Charles started explaining to them about Black Power, they were a part of the neighborhood club they had formed. And Donnie Delaney, he was an artist. And he had pulled them into this a club that they had started. And they all went to Carver. And so when they started putting kids out of school for wearing afros and stuff, of course, they were the first ones that got kicked out of school.
Wow.
And they were trying to get back in school. Well, Charles had a sister, her name was Sheila, and she had her friends, Rose Briggs and Barbara Briggs and Nadine Montgomery, Jewel Davis, Lamaris Davis. They were sisters of the guys that got kicked out of school. That was Donnie Delaney, Larry Davis, and Charles's other brother, Stephen Cap. And they were trying to get back in school. And the girls, they were in school talking to the other kids about what they needed to do to try and help them get back in school. So they had this underground effort going. They would do fire alarms and turn water on in the bathroom and
like delinquent
all over the floor.
Delinquent revolutionary shit.
Hey man. And so when my apartment that was the headquarters for the Invaders was located right behind Carver School, and a lot of the kids that went to Carver, they walked to school because they didn't have school buses. You walked, don't care how far away from school you were, if you were in a Black neighborhood. Now they had buses in the white neighborhood, but they walked to school past my apartment, and they stopped and Ian and holler at me and Charles and tell us about what they were going through at school. And Donnie, he was an artist, as I said, and he had a Levi jacket that he had cut the sleeves out of, and he had painted on the back images of a black fist and some lightning and stuff. And he had wrote across the top of the shoulders of the jacket, Invaders. And I said, whoa, what's that, Donnie? What's up with that? So he was telling me at this time, there was a TV program called The Invaders. And the theme of the movie, the TV program, was that these aliens had come down to Earth and they had come to make this world their world. And that metaphor resonated with Donnie. And so he said, we are invaders because we're trying to make this our world. And that resonated with me. So I'm like, okay, I think I do the same. So I, became an invader based on Donnie's, metaphor and explanation of how they came together as a group So because of this Black Power, the Black Organizing Project was made up of different groups. I proposed to the group that the Invaders be made a part of the group, like the student groups, and that got the Invaders on the board.
That's amazing. So, I mean, it's amazing to hear that an artist had this, fueled the beginning of the whole Invaders organization. So now Donnie Delaney, though, he had a terrible fate. What happened to Donnie?
Yeah, that's what I'll say. Donnie, his family, like a lot of Black families, then they first of all they were terrified of Black Power. But there was something they were even more terrified of, and that was marijuana.
Right.
And Donnie and like most kids smoke marijuana, and his family was so terrified of what that was going to do to him. Most Black people thought it would run you crazy, and so they had told him, not to do that. The kind of stuff, but he kept doing it. And Donnie got arrested, and he had a roach, a smoked up joint down to the end. That's what we call them, roaches. And he had a roach in his pocket, and they found the roach and they arrested him. And when his folks got him out of jail, they signed him up to go to the military, because they thought that would save him and straighten him out. And, of course, Cab and I, we tried to talk to his folks, and they literally put us out the house. And Donnie went to basic training. He went to the Army. He went to 2 months of basic training, and then a month of prep training to go to Vietnam, and they sent him to Vietnam. I think he was there maybe 6 weeks before he was killed. A beautiful person, a beautiful artist. He wasn't a warrior. He wasn't a fighter. He was really a great kid. I would be proud to have him as my son.
I feel that the American government, the whole Vietnam War, it was all about kind of taking revolutionaries, white or black. There was so much revolution going on within the universities and all this stuff. So they were just trying to send these people who had no business being over there to wipe out the revolutionary thought and the youth of America.
Right.
So,
well, one thing that you have to talk about when you're talking about Black Power is J. Edgar Hoover. J. Edgar Hoover came into government in 1912.
Wow.
Woodrow Wilson brought him into government to organize the radical division of the then it was the Bureau of Investigation. They weren't even the FBI then. And his job was to destroy radical organization. He was the one that destroyed the Communist Party in America.
Right.
And so once they chased the Congress outlawed the Communist Party, the reason he was so down on the Communist Party is because the Communist Party was helping the Black community. They were the ones that funded the Harlem Renaissance. The Communist Party, the theaters, they did the programs that a lot of the actors that became actors on Broadway and in Hollywood, they came out of the programs that the Communist Party started. And so it took the government about 50 years before they could really destroy it. But once they destroyed it, then they started looking at people like Paul Robeson and William Patterson, who had become real revolutionaries. And they're the ones that had picked up the black nationalist theme that came forward with Marcus Garvey. So when we get to the 1960s, Hoover is really entrenched. He's the most powerful man in government because he got a dossier on everybody. This is why nobody bothered him. And he had taken on the job of destroying the black movement. And it's at this time that he really starts to concentrate on doing with the Vietnam. See, when Dr. King came out against the Vietnam War, that was when Hoover went whole hog behind trying to destroy any black movement effort that was going on. So he concentrated on trying to kill the Black Power movement before it really got started. And forcing black guys to go to the military was a part of his plan. So
it's interesting that you mentioned the Communist Party because, for example, the song "Strange Fruit" by Billie Holiday was written by a member of the Communist Party. Understanding the plight of black people.
Yeah, well, see, this is what I'm saying. See, before the Communist Party started working with black people in Harlem in 1920, there was no real cultural development going on. Okay? See, and they got with people that were looking for a way to express their art. This is not mostly what you heard about with the musicians, but then people like Conte Cullen, the poets and writers, they didn't really have a forum, and actors, and so that's what the Communist Party saw, that if they could get those people interested in the intellectuals, interested in becoming a part of the Communist Party, that would be something they could build on. And that was what happened. And it was working pretty good until Hoover became the power and started to look at, because see, the idea was to stop black people from developing. It wasn't so much the Communist Party as it was they were working with black people, because the Communist Party had been in the country since 1900, but they were basically working with the socialists who worked basically with white people and white, as a part of the union movement in America. But when World War I ended, because of the Russians, they were called the Red Russians. The Red Russians were the communists, and the White Russians were the Russians that supported the Tsar. So when they kicked the Tsar out, and the communists took over in Russia, that's when the United States started concentrating on trying to put the communists out of America.
It was the White Russians who actually introduced milk to vodka also.
They did one thing good then.
All right. So
go ahead.
One thing I just want to say is that when I got presented from Pritchard, the director of the film, The Invaders, one thing that I really related to so much was like you were talking about, there was a mixing between artists, and revolutionaries, and juvenile delinquents, and for me, I came from a background of punk music, and we kind of organized in the same way. We had ways to organize concerts, all over North America, in this strange little pocket of the universe that we all had this common goal to like spread rock and roll. And I really I see so many parallels between what you went through with the Invaders and with the kids in the schools, frustrated, trying to find a way to organize. So when did Martin Luther King's role come into this?
Well, see, we're in 1967 here. Now, what we're talking about happened, say, between July and December of 1967. And that was a time when, other than Black Power and what we were trying to do, there was nothing happening in Memphis, you know. And so the white power structure was concentrating on trying to somehow discourage us or whatever, because we wasn't involved in anything that was destructive or anything like that. We didn't have any money, and we didn't have a Communist Party to direct us. The real Black Power activity was happening in Atlanta or up north someplace. And so we were like off to the side. And we really didn't have an economic base. So one of the things that was happening with the Black Organizing Project is that Cab, he wanted to concentrate on Black business development. So he had gone to Beale Street and started trying to talk to the merchants and the guys that hung out on Beale Street, the thieves, the pimps, the hustlers, and these kind of guys to try and create an organizing effort down there. And that effort was going pretty good, and the school effort was going pretty good. And then in December, on the 4th of December, Dr. King had a press conference in Atlanta. And at that press conference, he announced his Poor People's Campaign. And when he announced the Poor People's Campaign, of course, this J. Edgar Hoover got in, this was totally against what J. Edgar Hoover wanted to see happen. Before then, it was all about civil rights. And so they didn't, the March on Washington has happened, and the Kennedys and Johnson, they were all behind the integrationist kind of movement that had come out of the civil rights movement and the March on Washington, and which had also produced the activities that culminated in the Black Panther Party and Black Power, because the 63 March on Washington had made a lot of promises about what they were going to do in the Black community and all of this, but nothing was happening. And Black people in different large cities in 66 and 67 started. That's when the riot, Long Hot Summer area began to happen, and you had major riots in inner cities all over the country. And Dr. King's effort to start the Poor People's Campaign grew out of those efforts. He didn't just call for the Poor People's Campaign out of the clear blue. He called it because he was a part of the effort to try and get the federal government to do more in the inner city to deal with the riots that had happened. And nothing was happening. Johnson didn't do it. They passed bills like the Voting Rights Act and those kinds of things. And even the war on poverty was more about giving white folks jobs than it was about actually doing anything in the Black community. So
and it seems like at this point, when Dr. King realized about the Poor People's Campaign, there's a great documentary called King in the Wilderness, which talks about how when he went to Chicago and did try to do the peaceful march there, and he was faced with not just 200 or 300 people, there was like 10,000 people against him. You know, like
that
with
was in Cicero, and that was where
right.
he made the statement that he had faced racism all across the South, but that day in Chicago was the worst he had ever felt or experienced in terms of white hatred and racism.
And also,
he said he was lucky to get out alive.
There's also a part about how he visited projects in Chicago, and these buildings, they basically had coal heating, and there had never been coal in that building for who knows, like 40, 50 years. So people were living in complete poverty. And he talked about seeing junkies and like the drug problem, you know, which was way more, which like the slums of Chicago were eye-opening for him. But I think that's important to realize that a lot of the people that were allegiant to him, when he wanted to do the Poor People's Campaign, his supporters, his support system, they were not really into that idea. They wanted to do what like what you were saying about middle class rights.
Yeah, well, like I said, all of that brought Dr. King to December, and on December 4th, that's when he announced the Poor People's Campaign and why he had decided to do it. The thing that he did that most people miss, that turned out to be one of the most powerful observations he made, which was the federal government was responsible for poverty in America.
Right.
And this is why he based that realization is what he based the Poor People's Campaign on. So after he made his announcement, Dr. King went on the road and he preached and talked in black churches that had supported all of his efforts before, and they had raised money and all of this stuff when he was talking about middle class civil rights values, you know, moving into white neighborhoods, going to white schools, getting jobs, you know, integrating jobs and stuff like that. They were all for that. But when he started talking about the poor, you know, that was something they were not for. So it was a month, about 6 weeks, where he had preached and talked to churches and civil rights leaders about what he was trying to do with the Poor People's Campaign, but they were not having it. They were, you know, they like on the sideline watching him. And so his birthday, which is 2 days after mine, the 15th of January, and he was in Atlanta, and he was sick, and he had flu, and they had given him a little party, and he was telling them then that he was going to do the Poor People's Campaign if he did it alone, because that was what really mattered to him. He was not going to change his approach. See, and one thing, Eris, that we have not dealt with in terms of Dr. King is when he won the Nobel Peace Prize. See, when he won the Nobel Peace Prize, that really shattered or cracked the Civil Rights Coalition, because some of his aides wanted him to stop doing marches and stuff like that and start going to the corporate boardroom and talking to white people and raise money, you know, for the civil rights movement rather than continuing to do marches.
Right.
And so this is why he wasn't getting, and a lot of them felt that the reason he won the Nobel Peace Prize was because of the work they had did, and the press had given Dr. King credit for everything that was happening in the civil rights movement. So there were a lot of jealous individuals that felt Dr. King was being honored at their expense. So, and that had really split the SCLC organization, because some wanted him to do that, but then Reverend Abernathy, Reverend Hosea Williams, and Reverend Orange, James Orange, they were the ones that were on Dr. King's side as far as doing. They wanted him to do more marches. They wanted him to do more demonstrations. Whereas the other people in the organization, I don't care what their names are, I don't like to call them because people say you pointing people out. But they did not want any part of that. And this is why he was sick when he came to his birthday.
I'm curious, what did you guys, as the Invaders, what did you think of Martin Luther King at that point?
Well, at that point, I'll say this, and we didn't know Dr. King. Dr. King had never come to Memphis. He had never done, the only thing that he had done in the whole area was the march to Jackson to finish Meritage March.
Right.
And he didn't spend any time in Memphis then. When he came to Memphis because that's where the airport was. And they stayed overnight there before they went to Mississippi for the march. So Kobe went to Mississippi, and Kobe knew Dr. King, and he had his opinion of it. But me and Cal, we really didn't think much of it, because I saw him like Cal saw me when he came home and started telling me about Black Power, and I started telling him about being an American and loving the country. Well, Dr. King was a nonviolent, truly believed in the tactic. He was not someone who really thought that Black Power was bad. He just didn't see how it could win.
Right.
And so his thing was, yeah, okay, but how are we going to survive that? How are we going to build a situation that can help the most of Black people, the poor? And that's why he went at the poor people campaign more so than joining. But see, he had the problem he had with that is that most of the civil rights movement had come out against Black Power. They didn't want nothing to do with it. And that's what we were experiencing in Memphis, trying to organize. The civil rights, they wanted our leg power, and that kind of stuff. But as far as being a part of the leadership, trying to develop tactics and things like that, no, they didn't want anything to do with that as far as Black Power. So Dr. King, on the other side, he knew Stokely, he knew Rap, he knew Kobe and those, and he knew they were good people and they were trying to do what they thought was right. What he felt was that he could bring the two together. Yes. And that's what he was trying to do, bring the Black Power and civil rights together. And so, but at the time that he made the announcement about the Poor People's Campaign, we still didn't know him. And so what we were trying to do was build an independent kind of movement separate from civil rights, because they would not let us in.
Okay. And so now I find it really amazing how, you've got these, like you, you being, a veteran from Vietnam, you got Kobe, who was like, on that march with Dr. King, and Stokely when he was a kid, and so you have all these different minds that are kind of like collecting together and figuring out what the Invader organization was going to become. I'm just curious. So, when did how did the garbage strike come into play here?
4 or 5. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. Well, this story is so large, and it's a story like the Invaders documentary. It's a story that we tried for almost 45 years to get someone to make a movie about it. I had experienced people coming to Memphis telling me they're going to tell the story, and they get to, and so I sit down, just like I'm doing you today, share what I knew about it, and they would get this information, and they write the book, and when the book comes out, you got 4 or 5 sentences about the Invaders, and the most they're going to say is that they talk about the riot and how we had started the riot and how we had hurt Dr. King's effort and things like that. And so to get into that story, I really would like to do that and be able to tell that whole story from how what happened after Dr. King made his announcement for the Poor People's Campaign. Because the thing that happened that brought everything together was the Memphis sanitation strike.
Right.
The sanitation strike is the pivotal event that brings Dr. King, the Poor People's Campaign, and the Invaders together, and becomes really the divide that sends civil rights in one direction and Black power in the other, and it becomes the movement that we can deal with maybe in the next time we talk.
Right. All right, this is fantastic. We're gonna watch a little video here of Eartha Kitt, and when we come back, we're gonna talk a little bit more about the women's role in the Invader movement, in the Black Power movement. And all right, so sit back and here's a wonderful taste of Eartha Kitt, the card of justice.
I'm here. As a papa, those are other tales. Tales that males came first, they are the worst. Bred instead, Earth Mother tales. Men have been menaces ever since Genesis, just as it's chaptered and versed. Out of the primal chaos, out of the swell and swirl, rose a resplendent, virtue invested, full but firm-breasted girl, predating Adam. We had a madam human, long before sinning in the beginning, woman. Skip.
All right, we got our co-host Jenny here now.
Hi, Jenny.
Hi, yeah. I loved the information you gave, and I'm the conversation that we're moving to with Eartha Kitt, but more importantly, the women's role in the Invaders, which I'm super fascinated by.
Just starting about Eartha Kitt. So Eartha Kitt was an incredible woman. She actually was high yellow, right? She was and I was reading her autobiography, and she talks about how when she was a kid, her mom was basically homeless, and she had a younger sister who was full black, but her mom was so poor that she would have to go onto plantations and ask for pity from like slaves to like shelter them or give them food, and she would actually hide Eartha Kitt in the forest because she didn't want the slaves to see that one of her children was half white. Or actually, I don't think she was half white. I think she might have been part native or so. Anyways, so Eartha came from the dirt, and then, she moved to New York as a teenager, and then joined this dance troupe, the Catherine Dunham School of Dance, which was actually Catherine Dunham was like a voodoo priestess, and so she had this amazing group of dancers that she was teaching, and when you hear about this kind of stuff, you got like Marlon Brando would come to their dance school and play bongos, and all these girls would be dancing, and like and she was hired for movies and all sorts of stuff. So Eartha Kitt really she learned all this amazing dance stuff, and then she rose into like theater, and then now she's like thrust into like I think she was in Othello. And it was Orson Welles, the main actor in the film, or in the play. And there's even a thing that they had an interesting relationship. Orson Welles has called her like the most fantastic creature ever existing, or something, and there is a moment when they were performing where like Oscar Wilde, it's not Oscar Wilde, sorry. I meant he was holding her in his arms, and he bit her lip, and her lip bled because they were supposed to kiss in this scene. So Eartha was like really out of some other world, John B., what was your impressions of Eartha Kitt when you first saw her?
Well, I only saw pictures of Eartha until maybe in the late 50s or early 60s, because as you were saying about her voodoo background, she was really on the very edge of the black community, unless you were, maybe New York, very radical, but Southern, she was like, well, the South is religious, Baptist, and so if you religious and Baptist, that's like the devil,
Right, totally, yeah.
You're not gonna get any artistic credit because everybody is really afraid of you.
I mean, she had that song "Am I Evil?" Yeah, exactly.
And she played on that. She was, to me, that edgy, way out, revolutionary punk kind of attitude about everything. I mean, her acting, she didn't want to be like everybody else because she never saw herself like everybody else. She wanted to, she loved the edge, and she played it to her advantage. And when they started playing her music on the radio, it was like, everybody listening to straight R&B, hard blues.
So she was on the fringe.
Yeah. So when they started playing her music, it's like, who is that?
Right. It's interesting too. So one of the legendary moments of Eartha's life was when she was invited to the Ladybirds dinner, the First Lady's dinner, right in the beginning of the Vietnam War. And so Eartha shows up, and she's like says this dramatic thing about how she wouldn't send any of her children off to war on this battle that doesn't and she made Lady Bird cry, and then suddenly like she got blacklisted from America, like she wasn't allowed to play anymore in America. And then there's this wonderful for me. I see Eartha as such a she's the card of justice, for the Black Tarot,
Yeah.
And this card, the magic thing about this card is that if you look at it, in one hand she's holding the scales of justice, and then in the other hand she's holding a sword, a double-edged sword, and the double-edged sword is supposed to symbolize the power of your words, that they can hurt or they can heal with the same intensity, So I feel like Eartha really, she had this sharp tongue, and I mean, for me, when I started discovering R&B as a teenager, for me, like Eartha Kitt or like Screaming Jay Hawkins, I put them in the same category of like this like horror rock, icons, that were completely different to like, all of R&B and stuff. They were these like theatrical presences that like you said, it scared Black people, it scared white people, it scared everybody. Like there's a great story about Screamin' Jay when he played in Detroit, and he had just had the routine with the coffin, and he had 3 shows booked in Detroit. And when the first show he came out of the coffin, the audience freaked out and left the show. So it's almost like the world wasn't ready for these people, But I wanted to play one really beautiful track that when Eartha was finally banished from America, she wound up in Turkey, and the most amazing thing I found about Eartha Kitt, and I find this a lot about like early Black entertainers like Sammy Davis also, like they weren't just actors and dancers, they could do anything. You could put any instrument in there, and it was so much more than just singing a song. It was, and like, for example, the Mighty Hannibal, who was one of my mentors, he told me specifically that Sammy Davis, for example, he lost an eye because he was dating Kim Novak, and like the people in the Rat Pack didn't want him dating a white girl, but and Martin Luther King, I remember he used to invite Sammy Davis sometimes to his rallies to like provide a little bit of like comedy relief and a little bit of entertainment, and he didn't even have a band, he would just sing this like incredible songs, and I feel like a lot of these people were like misunderstood later, as being Uncle Toms or something like this, but in fact they were the ones who like took it for the team, and made white people realize like, oh my God, like they have so much talent, and so much to offer the world that white businesses had to, incorporate them into the structures or whatever,
Yes. Yeah.
So one curious thing I would like to know about like the role of women in the Invaders, because I know that there was the Invaderettes and stuff which happened later, but if you could tell me about like how women were involved when you first started doing this.
Well, okay. The thing that doesn't really come through out of our culture is that women have always been the ones that really carried the culture. And this is just a role of women, period. They're the mothers. They have that maternal concern for, everybody more than just the men. We can afford to be individuals, selfish in terms of the way we approach things. But and you'll find some women like that. But most women have a communal kind of concept. And with us, slave pens that's what it was all about, because nobody had enough of anything. So they're the ones that had to figure out how to feed everybody, to keep harmony going, and to deal with master. Men didn't deal with, they did what master said, but the women were the ones that figured out how to get stuff out of him. you know, food for everybody and things like that. So when the Invaders started, as I said, Charles's oldest sister, Sheila, she was a part of that group, and Rose Briggs, and they were the ones who, after the guys who started stuff got kicked out of school, they were the ones that had to figure out how to salvage something from that. So they were the ones that went to school, you know, and you know, rather than getting kicked out, they figured out how to stay in school, what to do, how to get the other kids to participate in it, and do little demonstrations, and so even though they were teenagers and high school kids, they were the ones that really created the role for women in the Invaders, because we were very chauvinistic at that point. If you were a woman, and this is when I say we, I'm talking about men in general. If you looked at any black organization, if there were women involved, they were the secretaries. They were the ones that, you know, when you had events that did the fixing up and the stuff like that, they weren't the ones that stood at the podium and talked. They weren't the ones that did the out front kind of stuff. But, and this is something I learned from being in the Invaders, most of my successful organizing effort came because women were involved. Usually, if it was just guys, we got very little done. Because men tend to want to measure how long it is. You know, who's got the biggest? I mean, we do that. We have a lot of different ways of doing that, but that's really what we're doing. And the one that usually got the longest, I think they got the longest or the biggest, they're usually the ones that end up in the leadership position.
Right.
Okay? And so had we not had women involved as organizers, and this is not just with the Invaders, but with the Black Organizing Project, the Edwina Harrell, Helen Bridges, Conchita Smith, they were women that were in school, and so they were the ones that helped me put the first newsletter together. I put the ideas, but they had to type it. See, back then you didn't have printers. You had to write it by hand, then you had to get it typed, then you had to transfer the type to a stencil.
Those things,
The stencil, and put that on the lid, the rope. They did all that.
So, okay, at this point, like I know that the Invaders organizations, for example, went to like pimps and hustlers and gangsters, and you were able to convince them to stop warring against each other and to become invaders, right?
Yeah.
And there was, for example, like Juanita Thornton, who was like, you know, talking to prostitutes, you know, and telling them that like this is not the way that a woman should be treated, and you should have more respect for, you know. So in my mind, I find it just incredible how you guys were addressing the real problems on the street and incorporating the Invader movement and like collecting, you know, all these juvenile delinquents and for me, I mean, like you guys were like punk rock. I mean, when you see those pictures, there's so much style, you know, like just like the cutout, you know, the jean vest, you know, and like you guys look so good, you know, and it's a really beautiful thing to see how you were able to mix art and revolution. And so now I was actually wanted to talk to you about John Gary Williams, who was on Stax Records. Can you tell us about how you met him and your relationship with him?
Well, John, like I say, John had 4 brothers, okay? And they moved to Riverside when John was still in elementary school. And so his brothers, he was the baby. And when you're in a family and there's 4 boys, you got to be able to take care of yourself. You know? And so he was feisty as a little kid because, like I say, they fix hamburgers for dinner. You got to be able to get yours, you know, because nobody's going to get it for you. And but he always liked music, you know. And my sister, who's right over me, her name is Bernice. John was trying to learn to sing, and there was this group called Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers.
Right.
And their Why Do Fools Fall in Love? That was their first big hit. Well, John had a voice just like Frankie.
Wow.
And he was, you know, sing, and then you doo-wop on the corner because it wasn't really any place else to go for that. But she took him, there was a show on radio on Saturday morning, like a talent show. And she took him down and introduced him and got him on the show. And he won. And that, he said that really changed his whole approach to music, and because he felt like he really had talent. And
it's amazing because the whole talent show thing, also like Otis Redding, for example, also had the same thing happen to him where, you know, he was doing Little Richard songs in a talent show and people were going crazy.
All those, see, you were talking about Bill early. See, there's a theater on Bill called the Palace Theater. And Nat D. Williams, who's an icon, he was the first black DJ on radio in America. He started in 1948. He became the first black DJ because at WDIA, which was a famous radio station, the 2 white guys owned the station, and they wanted to do a country and western format, and they were going out of business. And so they heard about Nat D and came to Beale Street, and because Nat D had a talent show going at the Palace, and this is where people like B.B. King played that talent show. He won, you know, people like that. So they hired Nat D to try and that was the first R&B station in the country that was strictly R&B. And was DJs, and all of the DJs were black and all of that. And so his talent show at the Palace was what you wanted to get on. Because if you got on there and you won, hey, you were big talent. Because like I say, people like Ma Rainey, she played his show. Any big time, Bobby Blue Bland, all those guys played his show, and when they won, they were somebody. Then they could get a job. They could perform at Club Handy, which was owned by Sunbeam Mitchell.
Right.
And Sunbeam started the Chitlin circuit. So all of this is why, like John Gary, once he won on the talent show on the radio, he went to the Palace and he won there. He was in he went to Booker T. Washington, and the guys in the group with the Mad Lads were all students at Booker T. Washington, and they were performing professionally before they ever graduated from high school.
Wow,
that's so cool.
And that's why when he got drafted and went to Vietnam and survived Vietnam. And when he came home, he wanted to be an invader because, like I said, he knew me, he knew Charles. We all grew up right there. As a matter of fact, we all lived on the same street.
Wow.
John lived on the north end. My mother's house, who's still there, she's 100 years old this July.
Wow, congratulations. That's amazing.
And she, her house was in the middle, and Charles's house was 3 doors up. So we all knew each other. And when he came home, he had heard about us through people that, while he was in the military. And he came home right before the sanitation strike. And he told, he'd come back and we talked. I had an apartment of my own then, but it was still in Riverside. And he told me he wanted to be an invader, and everyone that, of course, in Stacks thought he was crazy because they knew Black Power was going to mess up your career and all of that. But, John said, hey, man, it's more about my people than anything. So I'm going to be an invader, even if I can't sing another song.
Wow.
I'm going to be a part of the invader. And I said, okay, so you're the Minister of Defense.
Well, yeah, you had to make a mad lad the Minister of Defense.
How did just talking to your ma that's still with us? I was curious, like, how did your family and your parents and all that? Because you guys were such young gentlemen. Like, how did they respond to you wanting to be so outspoken?
Well, my family is a strange family because of my mother. She was a cutting edge person. Her and my father left Mississippi under the cover of night because, see, at that time, you couldn't just move. People who sharecropped were like prisoners on the land, and you couldn't just go. And my father got drafted right at the end of World War II. And by the time he cleared physicals and stuff like that, the war was over.
Wow.
And so he never really went any further than Memphis, but he hated farming too. So it was no way he was going to come back to the farm. So he and my mother, they talked by letter, and they decided to try to get the family out of Mississippi. And it's called the dark of the moon. When you and that's because there's no light, and you couldn't drive with lights because, like I say, there was what they call convict leasing then. Anytime you get arrested, they fine you. If you couldn't pay the fine, some white person bought your fine, and you worked for them for free.
Wow. So
they braved all this getting out of Mississippi to get to Memphis. And I was too young because I couldn't go to school. I was just 4. But my older sister above me was the youngest, and she could go to school. So I stayed down with my grandparents until I could go to school. But my mother, she was a gospel singer.
Oh,
cool. She actually wrote a song that is called I Got 2 Wings.
Oh, wow.
She had a group, and they sang in churches all around. She was quite popular. And her and my father broke up. And when they broke up, it was like she had to choose between sending us kids back to Mississippi in order to survive, or just struggling through it the best she could. And it was rough, but we made it. And so being around someone with that kind of courage and strength was, and she always felt that Black folk had to stand up for themselves, because wasn't nobody gonna stand up for you. And so, you know, when I became an invader, she was afraid for me, you know, and my sisters, everybody was afraid for me, but nobody gave me any negative grief or anything. They were as supportive as they could be. And, you know, anytime I went to jails, they were the first ones down there, you know, even though they couldn't afford it.
It's beautiful. Family.
You know, they got me out.
I'm just curious. So you said that your parents had split up. How about contact with your father, or were you able to develop a relationship with him at all?
Well, I knew him. I used to go over to the house to see him and that kind of thing, but it was sort of like you and your father, except he wasn't a drug addict, you know. But it was that he was. I don't know. My mother married the best man she could have, and he was my father. I learned more from him, and I call him a 3-word man because he didn't say much, and you didn't want him to go past that, because if he get past that, he fussing, and you didn't want him to fuss. So you listen and you learn. And you tried to do what he said, because, I mean, he never laid a hand on us. He never got abusive or anything like that. He was a great guy. I always consider him my father. We called him Daddy Otis, you know, and he was the daddy for all of us. He pulled my mother out of the shithole we were in that my daddy left us in, and he was a part of her life for about 5 years before they got married, and he never spent a night in the house with us until then. Wow. So, you know, he gave me that image that what it meant to be a man. And
well, he saw through an amazing man that we're interviewing today, so he must have been quite the guy.
He was.
Yeah, amazing.
You know, I'm so excited to have you here. You know, we've been working together for a few years now, you know, with the Black Power Tarot, and I can't wait. You know, we're saving a lot of the more stories for the next episode, but right. I'm so honored to have you here. To you know, you really changed my life in such a big way. You know, when I was growing up, like I had troubles with my father, but he also did instill in me the idea of Black Power. You know, telling me about, you know, the Panthers and Malcolm X. You know, and although, you know, he had his weaknesses and you know, drug problem and all this kind of stuff. But I feel also the way that you talk about, you know, I feel like the pivotal moments that I needed him in my life to show me a way, and also in a way to teach me how not to raise my children, because you know I was living in a lot of fear and stuff when I was a kid. But you know, when we started working together, I mean, you were the one who wrote me into the Invaders story, and you know. Pritchard, the director, you know, him and JB were able to gain your trust, you know, into retelling your story. And then Pritchard told me he was playing you my music from the shrines, and that it was your idea that you were like, hey, like, get this guy to do the whole soundtrack, you know, and actually from working on this movie for 8 years, you know, it was all of the images of your life, you know, that I was putting music to. You know, it got so deep into my mind and into my dreams that the Black Power Tarot was actually born from this experience, you know. And yeah, I just want to say that I'm so happy to have you, and we're gonna have like another 2 or 3 episodes, you know, discussing, you know, Black Power and the roots and so maybe this would be a good time to play that Ushkadara video. The reason I want to play this one, but we're going back to Eartha Kitt here for a second, just because when she was in Turkey, there's a really beautiful part of her life where they talk about how the people, the organizers of her concerts, whatever, they had taken away her passport, you know, and made her, you know, do these shows, and she actually went ahead and learned Arabic, you know, and she was that kind of person. She could do that, you know. So she learns Arabic, you know, and then she woos the entire country of Turkey, you know. And there's a really funny moment in her book where she talks about how she gets paid in gold coins, and she didn't know what to do with gold coins, and she was afraid about traveling with them. So she actually had her tailor sew them into her clothes so that when she would get on a plane, like they wouldn't even know that she was holding like all her money in gold hidden on her body, you know. So just, you know, I wanted to play this one song because here you see her master like the Turkish language, and you see her basically make an entire another culture like fall in love with her. So let's check that out, and then we'll be back and talking a bit more.
Before we get into that, because it's still loading, we can maybe go to this video of her talking about, it gives more essence about her character and like how her feminist power that she had and how funny and powerful she is.
Let's do it.
This one.
With Eartha Kitt?
That's not for me to decide. Not for someone who decides to live with me to decide. Not for me.
But are you willing to compromise within a relationship?
To compromise? What is compromising? Compromising for what? Compromising for what reason? To compromise for what? To compromise. What is compromise?
If a man came into your life, wouldn't you want to compromise?
Stupid. A man comes into my life and I have to compromise? You must think about that one again. A man comes into my life and you have to compromise for what? For what? For what? A relationship is a relationship that has to be earned, not to compromise for. And I love relationships. I think they're fantastic. They're wonderful. I think they're great. I think there's nothing in the world more beautiful than falling in love. But falling in love for the right reasons, falling in love for the right purpose, falling in love, falling in love. When you fall in love, what is there to compromise about?
Fantastic.
You know, she reminds me of Little Richard. He gave an interview where he was talking about how he, you know, who he was, and the way that he carried him, he moved, and the way he expressed himself. She sound, you know, so similar, especially, you know, the concept of compromise that she's discussing is what made her so different, because the culture that produced us as a people was a compromise culture. You never claimed all of anything. You were raised to be a half a loaf kind of person. You know, even though you got the whole loaf, even though you are the whole loaf, you've got to give up half of it to keep what you got.
Wow.
So I understand exactly what she means. What's the other compromise? You got to bring something to the table, because you know, other than that, I'm giving up some of me, and it's like, you know, never take a step back, because anytime you take a step back, you're giving up ground that you got to win again, ground that you already have. So why step back? Stand there and fight. If they take that from you, you know it's because they took it. But for you to voluntarily step back and give ground that you already have, no. That's what a compromise is.
You know what I find really beautiful? I'm so happy you mentioned Little Richard too. You know, is that like these artists, you know, like Little Richard had learned rock and roll and like the crazy way of life with this kind of like queer community that he was a part of. You know, like Escarita, and there were like male impersonators or female impersonators and all this stuff. And you know, even in India, actually, before the British came, you know, there were transsexuals and in society, and they were accepted, you know. And it was only when the colonialism came that they were like, oh no, you know, you have to follow this way, and no, you can't be a queer, you can't be this, you know. So I feel like art, in a lot of ways, it's in the celebration of queerness, you know. It's what gave normal people a taste of the wild, you know, and they had no idea. And then, you know, you have people like Little Richard and also like Eartha Kitt, who later in their lives, you know, in the 80s and stuff, they were like they were people, the queer community loved them, you know, and they were like always fighting for gay rights and stuff like that, you know. And I'm curious, did you ever get to see Little Richard back in the day?
Yeah.
On Beale Street?
Just getting started. You know, he was performing on Beale Street in little bitty clubs, you know. And the thing when you're talking about, you know, queer, I think life is a role. And you learn a role that fits you and how to adjust to the outside, what's going on outside of you. And the thing that I notice about most people that are considered gay or queer is that they're happy in the role that they've been able to develop and find that gives them happiness. It's not about what society presents to you as happiness. Like Eartha Kitt was saying, you know, why should I try to fill that role when I got a role in my own head about who I want to be and what I want to be. And if I feel like being this today, I'll be that. But I might want to be something totally different tomorrow. But it's only me that has the right to say, you know, what that is. I should not have to put that up against what somebody else said I should be and try to fill that in. Why should I waste time doing that?
Amazing. All right. Well, I think we've reached the end of this episode. John B., we're going to see you next week. Same time, same place. We're going to talk about Dr. King, and we got we're going to talk about Melvin, you know, and we got a lot of wonderful stories to share. You know, in this beautiful universe that we live in. Just on one last thing, is there something a message that you could send to all like the activists out there, you know, the young bloods, you know, the Black Lives Matter kids, the people who are, you know, going out there and protesting and stuff? Can you give them some words of hope?
Yeah. As I said about compromise and stepping back, giving up on what you believe will make you whole, and caring about the community as a whole, and trying to get for that community that which you feel it deserves. Never take less. Never take less of anything. You have full freedom, total freedom. And to accept, you may have to live with less. You may not be able to reach the fullness of what it is you want at that moment, but that has to be your vision. That has to be that something that you're shooting for, because that makes you really who you are. And art is one of the few things in life that allows you to put yourself fully into something that you think, something that you feel. And as you were saying earlier, Eris, about what you did for me, I can say that knowing you has done a lot for me, because you gave me ideas about me. And when you came up with Black Power Terror and told me that that's what you were going to do, and you invited me to be a part of it, you freed me up in a way that I'd never been given freedom before, to actually try and be the person that I believe I could be if I got the opening that we found through Black Power Terror. I've seen Europe and things that I could only dream about actually doing, and I give you all the credit for where I am today, just based on that. Is that the American flag? I hope so.
No, it's the Confederate flag.
It's same flag. Same flag.
John B, I thank you for that compliment. But I can't wait to talk to you more next week. Mm-hmm. And thank you so much for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Pietro and Pete out there twiddling the knobs. All right, so there we go. There we got episode 3 done. See you next week.
All right. Love you.
We got a little tribute to Canada coming up. Canada, the North Star. You can do it.
The city's very clean, you see. The people welcome you and me. It is a home away from home. It's Canada, and Canada, and Canada. Folks treat you like a queen, and Canada. They never will be mean, and Canada. They treat you like a king. You feel welcome. It makes you wanna sing. Newfoundland, Nova Scotia is always green. The scenery is like a dream. And PI waters are blue and clear. In Canada, it's really near. And Canada, folks treat you like a queen. And Canada, they never will be mean. And Canada, they treat you like a king. You feel
wanna sing. New Brunswick and BC coastal shores, Manitoba and Ontario lakes are wide. The rivers do flow from side to side. And Saskatchewan and Canada, folks treat you like a queen. And Canada, they never will be mean. And Canada, they treat you like a king. You feel welcome. It makes you wanna sing. You'll see West Edmonton Mall, where fun parks and stores stand tall. You'll see the ice rink glow, to the water park kids can go. In Canada, la la da 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 da. In Canada, la dee 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 dee. In Canada, whoa ho ho ho. Canada, 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 Canada.